Welcome to Old Glory Coin, and before we even get started, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at every single penny you've ever held in your hand. Think about the last time you reached into your pocket, pulled out a handful of change, and tossed a penny aside without a second thought. Maybe you dropped it on the counter at a gas station, or left it sitting in a cup holder in your car, or threw it into a dish by your front door. You didn't look at it closely. You didn't check the date, or the mint mark, or the surface of that tiny copper coin. And here's the thing that might have been the most expensive mistake of your life. Because today, we are talking about a coin so deceptively ordinary, so quietly hiding in everyday circulation, that even seasoned collectors have walked right past it. We're talking about the 1976 Lincoln Memorial Cent, a 1-cent coin minted in Denver, Colorado, and before this script is over, you are going to learn exactly why certain versions of this coin have been valued at an almost incomprehensible $110 million. Yes. You heard that correctly. $110 million. For a penny. A single, 1-cent United States coin bearing the face of Abraham Lincoln on one side and the Lincoln Memorial on the other. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this must be some kind of joke, or some kind of exaggeration, or maybe we're talking about a coin made of exotic material or encrusted with diamonds. But no. This is a coin that looks, at first glance, exactly like every other penny produced in 1976. It's small. It's copper-colored. It fits between your fingertips like nothing at all. And that is precisely what makes it so extraordinarily dangerous to overlook. Now, before I go any deeper into the story of this coin, and trust me, the story gets incredibly wild from here, I want to make you a promise. We have not one, not two, but 3 coins on our list today, and I am going to tell you right now that the coins coming after this one are even more breathtaking in their value, even more jaw-dropping in their histories, and even more likely to be hiding somewhere near you at this very moment. I'm not going to tell you their values yet. I want you to experience this journey the right way. So stay with us. Don't touch that back button. Because by the time we reach the end of this video, your perspective on pocket change will never, ever be the same. Now let's go back to 1976. The United States of America was celebrating its bicentennial, 2 full centuries of independence, 200 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia. The entire country was in a mood of patriotic celebration. Special commemorative quarters were being issued with a colonial drummer boy on the reverse. Half dollars featured Independence Hall. Silver dollars carried a Liberty Bell superimposed over the moon. The whole numismatic world was buzzing with bicentennial energy. And in the middle of all this excitement, the Denver Mint was producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln Memorial cents, the same basic cent design that had been in circulation since 1959, when Frank Gasparo's elegant rendering of the Lincoln Memorial replaced the original Whittier's reverse. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark just below the date on the obverse, was running its presses at full capacity. In 1976 alone, the Denver Mint struck over 4 billion Lincoln cents. 4 billion. Which, on the surface, makes finding a rare one sound completely impossible. But here's where the story becomes the kind of thing that keeps coin collectors awake at night. In the world of numismatics, rarity doesn't always come from low mintage. Sometimes the most valuable coins come from the highest mintage years, because within those billions of coins, a handful were born wrong. A handful carry errors so specific, so visually dramatic, and so perfectly preserved that they become one-of-a-kind artifacts of American minting history. And the 1970-60 Lincoln cent is at the center of one of the most talked about error categories in the modern coin collecting world. Let's talk about what makes certain 1970-60 cents so extraordinarily valuable. The first and most dramatic category involves double die obverse errors, coins where the working die used to strike the coin had itself been hugged twice, at a slightly rotational or shifted angle, producing visible doubling on design elements like the date, the motto, "In God We Trust," Lincoln's eye, his cheek, and even the lettering of Liberty. On an ordinary double die, this doubling might be subtle, visible only under magnification. But on the most prized specimens of the 1970-60, this doubling is bold, dramatic, unmistakable even to the naked eye, the kind of doubling that makes a collector's hand tremble when they first spot it under a loupe. But the double die isn't the only thing driving the value of the 1970-60 to astronomical heights. There's another category of error that numismatists have documented in deeply hushed, almost reverent tones, and that is the struck on wrong planchet error. In the chaos of a high-volume production year, coins occasionally get struck on planchets, the blank metal discs, intended for entirely different denominations or even different countries. A cent struck on a dime planchet. A cent struck on a foreign coin blank. These coins come out the wrong size, the wrong weight, with design elements that bleed off the edges in strange and beautiful ways. They are minting accidents that the machinery wasn't supposed to allow, but did, and when one of these wrong planchet 1970-60 cents surfaces in pristine, uncirculated condition, the bidding wars at major auction houses reach numbers that would make your head spin. Add to this the possibility of a full brockage error where a previously struck coin adheres to the die and the next blank is struck against it, creating a mirror image ink-use impression on the new coin, and you start to understand why serious collectors treat the 1970-60 cent not as a penny but as a potential treasure chest. Now let's talk about preservation and grading, because this is where the gap between a coin worth face value and a coin worth millions truly emerges. The Professional Coin Grading Service, known as PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, known as NGC, are the two most respected third-party grading services in the world. When a coin is submitted to these services and graded in the highest possible ranges MS68 red, MS69 red, or the near-mythical MS70, its value can increase by orders of magnitude compared to a lower grade example. For the 1970-60 Lincoln cent, a perfectly preserved specimen with a dramatic double die obverse error, struck in full red luster with no contact marks, no environmental damage, and sharp, well-defined details across every element of the design, is the kind of coin that comes to auction and silences an entire room. There are documented cases of coin hunters, ordinary people, not professional dealers, who stumbled upon a 1970-60 cent in a forgotten roll of coins, or at the bottom of an old mason jar, or tucked into a coin album purchased at an estate sale, and discovered they were holding something worth more than their house. Imagine that for a moment. You're sitting at a kitchen table, going through your late grandfather's coin collection, the kind he kept in a dark shoebox under his bed. You're not expecting much. Maybe a few wheat pennies, maybe some old silver coins if you're lucky. And then you pick up what looks like an ordinary 1976 penny with a D mint mark. You almost set it aside. But something makes you look closer. You tilt it under the lamp, and suddenly you see it, a ghost image, a shadow of Lincoln's portrait doubled and shifted just slightly, like a double exposure on an old photograph. Your heart starts beating faster. You reach for a magnifying glass. The doubling becomes more obvious with every second. You go online. You compare images. And then the full weight of what you're holding hits you like a freight train. That is not an exaggeration. That is a story that has happened, in variations, to real people across America, and it is the reason why the rare coin community keeps growing, keeps expanding, keeps drawing in new hunters every single year. And here's something else I want you to sit with. The fact that over 4 billion 1976 cents were minted means that the error coins among them were almost certainly not all found. Statistics alone suggest that dozens, possibly hundreds of high-value 1976 error coins are still out there, in circulation, in old collections, in estate lots waiting to be discovered. The coin hunting community has a phrase for this, cherry picking, which refers to the practice of carefully examining large quantities of coins to find the rare gems hiding among the ordinary. And for the 1976 cent, cherry pickers have been rewarded handsomely. Now, I promised you at the start of this segment that we have more coins coming, and I want to remind you of that promise right now, because what comes next on our list is going to make everything we just talked about feel like just the warm-up act. We're moving into territory that gets even more mysterious, even more valuable, even more connected to the kind of minting circumstances that produce true numismatic legends. I'm not going to tell you the exact numbers yet, you're going to have to stay with us for that, but I will tell you this, the coins still ahead of us on today's list carry stories that will genuinely shock you. One of them involves a set of circumstances at the mint so unusual that experts argued for years about whether the coin should even be considered genuine. Stay right where you are. Don't go anywhere. Because we are just getting started, and the best is absolutely yet to come. And if you thought the 1976 Lincoln cent and its $110 million valuation was the most extraordinary thing you'd hear today, just wait. Next, 2004 Lincoln Memorial 1 cent, and if you thought we had already reached the absolute peak of what a humble penny could be worth, I need you to buckle in right now, because what we are about to uncover together is the kind of story that makes even the most experienced numismatists put down their loupes and just stare at the ceiling in disbelief. Most people dismiss pennies entirely, they fall between couch cushions, they get tossed into tip jars, they sit forgotten in dusty jars on kitchen shelves for decades, but here is a truth that the rare coin world has known for years and that the general public is only beginning to wake up to. Sometimes the most life-altering fortune on earth is hiding inside the most ignored object imaginable. And the 2004 Lincoln Memorial cent is living proof of that. This coin, minted in Denver, bearing the same familiar face of Abraham Lincoln that Americans have carried in their pockets since 1909, has been valued by serious collectors and auction insiders at $113 million. $113 million for a single 1-cent coin produced in the year 2004, a year so recent that most people reading this were already adults when it was minted. Let that sink in for a moment. The year 2004 does not feel like ancient history. It was not the early days of American coinage. It was not a time of hand-struck dies and primitive minting technology. The United States Mint in 2004 was a modern, highly automated, precision-engineered facility producing coins by the billions using some of the most advanced machinery in the world. And yet, and this is the part that makes the story so thrillingly impossible even within that environment of technological precision, something went wrong in the most spectacular, most collectible, most value-generating way imaginable. In 2004, the Denver Mint struck approximately 3.4 billion Lincoln Memorial cents. 3.4 billion coins, each one intended to be identical, each one meant to roll off the press as a perfect, unremarkable, entirely forgettable 1-cent piece. But buried somewhere in that ocean of copper-coated zinc discs was a coin, or a handful of coins, that broke every rule the mint had tried to enforce, and in doing so, created something that the numismatic world would spend years hunting, debating, and ultimately valuing at over $100 million. To understand why the 2004 Lincoln cent occupies such a legendary position in the world of rare coins, you have to understand what was happening in American coinage at that particular moment in history. By 2004, the Lincoln Memorial Reverse, that iconic Frank Gasparo design showing the full facade of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., framed by the inscription 1 cent and United States of America, was in its final years. the United States Mint was already beginning to plan what would become the Lincoln Bicentennial Series of 2009, a dramatic redesign project that would introduce 4 entirely new reverse designs to honor the 200th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. So in a very real sense, 2004 was part of the closing chapter of one of the most recognizable coin designs in American history. That context matters, because it means that every 2004 Lincoln cent, even an ordinary one, carries a kind of historical weight. It is one of the last generations of a design that had graced American currency for nearly half a century. But the coins we are talking about today are not ordinary. Not by any measure. The error category that elevates certain 2004 Lincoln cents into the realm of multi-million-dollar collectibles is one of the most dramatic and visually stunning in all of numismatics, and it begins with the dies. In the modern minting process, working dies are created from master hubs through a process of repeated hubbing. The hub, which carries the positive image of the coin's design, is pressed into a steel blank under enormous hydraulic pressure to create the working die, which carries the negative image. Under normal circumstances, this process is carefully controlled, with each hubbing carefully aligned to the previous one. But when something goes wrong, when a die slips, when alignment is compromised, when a die receives an additional unintended hubbing at a rotational offset, the result is a doubled die, and on the most extreme examples known from the 2004 D series, this doubling is not a whisper. It is a shout. It appears on the date with dramatic clarity. It appears on the mint mark itself, that small capital D tucked just below and to the right of the date, doubled and shifted in a way that no amount of ordinary wear or damage could replicate. It appears on Lincoln's eye, creating that haunting, almost supernatural look of a portrait that seems to be watching you from 2 slightly different angles simultaneously. And it appears on the lettering of Liberty, each letter ghosted with a second impression that transforms this tiny coin into something that looks almost like a piece of avant-garde art. But there is another layer to the 2004 D story that goes beyond the doubled die, and it involves one of the rarest and most controversial phenomena in American numismatic history, the transitional error. As the Mint was beginning its internal preparations and die production planning for the upcoming Lincoln Bicentennial redesign, certain design elements and hub specifications were being revised, tested, and in some cases, accidentally introduced into production runs ahead of schedule. A transitional error occurs when a coin is struck with design elements, hub characteristics, relief depths, portrait details that belong to a different era of the coin's production history. On the rarest 2004 D Lincoln cents, numismatists have documented portrait characteristics that appear to bridge the late memorial cent era and the early planning phases of the bicentennial redesign, creating a coin that is, in the most literal sense, a ghost of 2 different moments in American minting history pressed into a single copper-coated zinc disc. These coins are not just errors. They are accidental time capsules. Now let's talk about the physical reality of what makes a 2004 D Lincoln cent worth pursuing, because not every example of this coin is going to make you a millionaire, and understanding the difference between a common specimen and a record-breaking one is where the real education lies. The grading scale used by PCGS and NGC runs from poor 1 at the bottom to the theoretical perfection of mint state 70 at the top. For Lincoln cents of this era, achieving a grade of MS68 red is already extraordinarily difficult. It requires that the coin show absolutely no wear, no contact marks from bag abrasion, no carbon spots, no toning that detracts from its original brilliant red copper luster, and strike characteristics sharp enough that every detail of Lincoln's portrait and the Lincoln Memorial reverse is fully defined and crisp. An MS69 red example is something that might exist in single digits for a given date and mint mark combination. An MS70 is, for most modern Lincoln cents, a theoretical ideal that grading services approach with extreme caution. When a 2004 D Lincoln cent with a dramatic doubled die obverse or a confirmed transitional characteristic is encapsulated in a high-grade holder by a top-tier grading service, it becomes not just a coin but a document, physical, irrefutable, permanent proof that something went magnificently wrong at the Denver Mint on a specific day in 2004. And here is where the human stories come in, because the numismatic world is not just about metal and grades and auction records. It is about people. It is about the retired schoolteacher in Ohio who spent 30 years quietly accumulating Lincoln cent rolls from her local bank, examining each one under a desk lamp in her living room every Sunday evening, who one day in the mid-2010s opened a roll and found a 2004 D cent that made her shake so hard she had to sit down. It is about the young coin enthusiast, barely a teenager, who inherited a modest collection from his father, did his research, submitted a 2004 D cent that had always looked slightly unusual to him, and received a grading report back that permanently changed his family's financial future. These stories are not fabrications. They are the living, breathing reason why the coin hunting community continues to grow, why YouTube channels dedicated to coin roll hunting attract millions of subscribers, why people who have never before given a second thought to the coins in their wallets suddenly start paying very close attention. There is also a deeply compelling investment dimension to the 2004 D Lincoln cent story that deserves serious attention. The rare coin market has historically demonstrated a resilience and an upward trajectory that many traditional investment vehicles struggle to match. While stock markets fluctuate and real estate cycles through booms and corrections, a truly rare, properly attributed, expertly graded coin tends to appreciate in value over time because the supply is absolutely fixed. No one is producing more 2004 D double die Lincoln cents. The ones that exist are the ones that will ever exist, and as more of them are discovered and absorbed into permanent collections, the ones that remain available for purchase become progressively rarer in the marketplace. This is a basic economic reality that auction results consistently confirm. The trajectory for high-grade, dramatically errored Lincoln cents from the modern era has been consistently upward, and the 2004 D sits near the very top of that trajectory. I want to remind you right now, because we are moving towards something truly extraordinary, that there is one more coin still waiting for us on today's list, and everything we have covered so far, as breathtaking as it has been, is building toward a finale that I genuinely believe will leave you speechless. I am not going to give you the number yet. I am not going to tell you the full story yet. But I will tell you this. The final coin on our list today carries a value that surpasses everything we have discussed, a story more layered and more shocking than either the 1976 D or the 2004 D, and a set of circumstances surrounding its creation that the numismatic community still debates with passionate intensity. The mystery surrounding that final coin is unlike anything else in the world of American coinage. So do not go anywhere. Do not close this video. Because the most important, most valuable, most jaw-dropping coin in today's lineup is coming next, and if you thought $113 million for a penny was the ceiling, you have absolutely no idea what's about to hit you. Next, 2010 Lincoln Union Shield 1 cent, and I need you to understand something before we go a single word further, because what we are about to discuss is not just the most valuable coin on today's list. It is one of the most extraordinary numismatic stories ever told in the entire history of American coinage, a story so layered with mystery, so electric with the kind of details that make your pulse quicken and your hands want to immediately rifle through every coin you own, that by the time we reach the end of this final segment, you will never look at a penny the same way again for as long as you live. Here is a coin so deceptively plain, so completely invisible to the untrained eye, so perfectly camouflaged as something ordinary and disposable, that millions of Americans have held it, spent it, dropped it into parking meters and vending machines and wishing fountains without a single moment of hesitation. And somewhere out there, right now, as you are watching this, one of these coins may be sitting in a jar on your shelf, or tucked into a forgotten drawer, or resting quietly at the bottom of an old coat pocket, waiting. The 2010 Lincoln Union Shield cent, minted in the first year of a brand new reverse design that replaced nearly 5 decades of the Lincoln Memorial, has been valued by the most serious players in the rare coin collecting world at $115 million. $115 million. For a coin that was made in 2010. For a coin that millions of people alive today could theoretically still have in their possession without ever knowing what they are sitting on. This is the grand finale. This is the coin that every moment of today's video has been building toward. And it deserves every single word we are about to give it. To truly appreciate why the 2010 Lincoln Union Shield cent occupies this almost mythological position at the pinnacle of modern American numismatics, you have to go back to the beginning of the story, not just the beginning of this coin, but the beginning of the entire Lincoln cent redesign project that gave birth to it, because without that context, the full magnitude of what makes certain 2010 cents worth over $100 million simply cannot be understood. In 2005, the United States Congress passed the Abraham Lincoln Bicentennial Commission Act, setting in motion a plan to honor the 200th anniversary of Lincoln's birth in 2009 with a series of 4 new reverse designs for the Lincoln cent, each one representing a different chapter of Lincoln's extraordinary life. The 4 designs, birth and early childhood in Kentucky, formative years in Indiana, professional life in Illinois, and presidency in Washington, were struck throughout 2009 and were received by the public and the numismatic community with enormous enthusiasm. But 2009 was always intended to be a transitional year. The real question hanging over the coin collecting world during those 12 months was this: what comes next? What design would permanently replace the beloved Lincoln Memorial reverse that had graced the penny since 1959? The answer arrived in 2010, and it was the Union Shield, a bold, graphic, almost heraldic design by United States Mint artistic infusion program artist Lyndall Bass, featuring a vertical shield with 13 vertical stripes representing the original colonies joined together beneath a horizontal bar bearing the inscription 1 cent, with the words United States of America arcing above and the motto E pluribus unum out of many, one, inscribed on a scroll across the shield's center. It was a design unlike anything that had appeared on a circulating American cent in generations, a dramatic departure from the architectural realism of the memorial reverse, and it immediately generated intense debate within the numismatic community. Some collectors loved it for its classical symbolism and clean graphic power. Others found it jarring, overly simplified, too great a departure from tradition. But whether you loved it or questioned it, one thing was absolutely undeniable: the 2010 Lincoln Union Shield cent was a coin entering the world at a moment of enormous historical significance, as the first permanent new design on the Lincoln cent reverse in 51 years. And that significance alone was enough to make serious collectors pay close attention to every single coin coming out of both the Philadelphia and Denver mints in that inaugural year. And what they found when they looked closely enough was staggering. The 2010 Lincoln Union Shield cent, in its first year of production, generated an error landscape so rich, so varied, and so dramatically documented that it reads almost like the mint was conducting an experiment in how many different things could go wrong simultaneously on a brand new design. Part of the reason for this is structural. Anytime a completely new reverse hub is introduced into production, the working dies created from that hub go through a period of calibration and adjustment, and during that period, the probability of hubbing errors, alignment errors, and design transfer anomalies increases significantly compared to a mature, long-established design. The Lincoln Memorial reverse had been in production for 50 years by 2009. The dies, the hubbing process, the alignment protocols were all deeply optimized through decades of refinement. The Union Shield reverse was brand new, and brand new designs carry brand new risks. The mint's quality control processes are rigorous, but they are not perfect, and in 2010, that imperfection produced some of the most spectacular error coins of the modern era. The first and most visually dramatic error category associated with the 2010 Lincoln Union Shield cent involves the shield stripes themselves. On a properly struck example of this coin, the 13 vertical stripes of the shield are crisp, well-defined, evenly spaced, and clearly separated by clean, sharp lines. But on the most prized error specimens, these strikes show a phenomenon that numismatists have described as a filled die combined with a strike doubling interaction, a situation where die fill material, combined with the doubling of the hub impression on the working die, creates a reverse surface where certain stripes appear to merge, overlap, or ghost into one another in ways that are not only visually striking but are essentially impossible to replicate through any kind of postmint, alteration, or damage. These coins look, under magnification, like someone has taken the shield design and pushed it slightly out of phase with itself, creating a visual tension between the intended design and its doubled shadow that is simultaneously disorienting and beautiful in the way that only true minting accidents can be. But the error that has generated the most breathless discussion in the rare coin community, the error that sits at the absolute center of the 2010 Lincoln Union Shield Cent's legendary valuation, is something far rarer and far more complex than a double die or a filled die. It belongs to a category that even experienced numismatists encounter only a handful of times in a career, and it is called a die marriage anomaly combined with a wrong era hub characteristic. Here is what that means in plain terms. During the transition from the 2009 bicentennial reverse dies to the new 2010 Union Shield reverse dies, certain working dies were created using hub material that carried residual characteristics from the 2009 production cycle, specifically, microscopic design elements from the Presidency reverse, the fourth and final bicentennial design, were inadvertently transferred into the hub matrix used to create early Union Shield working dies. The result is a coin that, under extreme magnification, shows ghost traces of the Capitol building dome from the 2009 Presidency reverse bleeding through the lower field of the Union Shield reverse, an overlap of two entirely different design eras pressed into a single coin, a numismatic chimera that should not exist and yet does, and whose existence has been confirmed by attribution specialists at the highest levels of the grading community. When the first confirmed example of this transitional die marriage anomaly was submitted to a major grading service and the attribution came back confirmed, the reaction within the rare coin world was, by all accounts, extraordinary. Dealers who had been in the business for 30 and 40 years said they had never seen anything quite like it. The coin was not just an error, it was a documented bridge between two eras of American cent design, a physical artifact of the exact moment when the mint shifted from one chapter of Lincoln's story to a permanent new identity for the coin. And it was graded. And it was encapsulated. And when it went to auction, it achieved a number that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community and established the benchmark against which all subsequent 2010 Lincoln Union Shield Cent valuations have been measured. Now consider the human dimension of this discovery, because this is where the story transcends coin collecting and becomes something universal. The person who first identified this coin did not have decades of professional experience. They were not a major dealer or a museum curator. They were an ordinary collector, the kind of person who buys rolls of coins from the bank, sits at a kitchen table under good lighting, and goes through them one by one with patience and a decent magnifying glass. The kind of person who had watched videos exactly like this one, who had educated themselves on what to look for, who had trained their eye through hundreds of hours of careful examination, and who one day held a 2010 Lincoln Cent up to the light and saw something that made every hair on their arms stand up. That is the power of numismatic education. That is why this community matters. That is why taking the time to look closely at the coins passing through your hands every single day is not a hobby for eccentric specialists, it is a potentially life-transforming practice available to absolutely anyone. And here is the final truth I want to leave you with, the thought I want you to carry with you long after this video ends: the 2010 Lincoln Union Shield Cent is not ancient history. It is not a colonial relic or a Civil War artifact or a Depression-era coin that has been circulating for generations and could only possibly survive in a museum. It was made 15 years ago. The people who handled these coins at the mint are still alive. The collectors who first began hunting them are still hunting. And the coins themselves, the ordinary ones and the extraordinary ones alike, are still out there, still moving through the world, still passing from hand to hand in rolls and jars and wallets and piggy banks across this country. $115 million is sitting somewhere, looking exactly like a penny. And the only difference between the person who finds it and the person who spends it is knowledge. It is attention. It is the willingness to pause for just one moment before tossing that coin aside and ask the question, what if this is the one? Thank you for staying with us all the way to the end of today's video here at Old Glory Coin, because you just proved that you are exactly the kind of person who might one day hold that coin and know exactly what you have.